I am so conservative.
Rationalize in my head. These are things I read in
And
the
I'm going to talk about Willow Creek.
Okay.
Willow Creek, a few years back, had
Remembered at the time when Will Rogers said, I don't belong to any organized religion. I'm a Baptist.
Yeah. I am so conservative. If you didn't jump to conclusions, you might not get any exercise. I am so conservative. And welcome to the Unknown Webcast. We have reached a time when people are more afraid of words than sticks and stones. Trigger warnings have become more necessary for those viewers who have a fear of hearing an idea which may lead to exposure to a potentially uncomfortable and challenging thought. This is that warning. I really am so conservative I can't turn left even when I'm driving. This includes being theologically conservative. I want to know and believe what is true, and I'm willing to challenge my beliefs. So, if you are easily offended, this is definitely not a safe space for you. Today is February 16th, 2021, and this is broadcast number 228. Joining us on today's Unknown Webcast is author, speaker, Professor James A. Beverly. He's the author of 16 books and a regular contributor to Faith Today and Christianity Today magazines. Today, we will be talking about his newest book, The QAnon Deception, Everything You Need to Know About the World's Most Dangerous Conspiracy Theory. My name is Don Vino. I'm president of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in Wonder Lake, Illinois, which produces the Unknown Webcast, and our senior researcher, co-host, and Time Magazine's 2006 Person of the Year, Ron Hensel, who will introduce the sponsors of today's webcast. And here is Ronnie Baby.
Greetings from sunny Florida, where the palm trees came out, saw their shadows, and now we have 12 more months of summer. Yes, indeed, I am the Time Magazine 2006 Person of the Year, and here is the proof. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to be there for the photograph, so I had to supply it later, but hey, it still works, right? And the only thing that's different since 2006, that was 14 years ago, I am no longer in control of the information age. I actually turned that control over to Bezos, Dempsey, and that other guy, Zuckerberg. So they're really in control of it now. I'm no longer in control. In any case,
you've been out of control for a long time.
But yeah, that's another story. Our sponsors for this version, this edition, this particular broadcast of the Unknown Webcast includes the Heresy Conservation Board, ensuring sustainable errors for the 21st century and beyond, and World's End Theology Outlet, your something or other. What did I used to say?
One stop.
One stop. Your one-stop resource for half-baked heresies, dubious doctrines, and other ideas whose time is gone. World's End Theology Outlet. And of course, on every program, we now have a legal disclaimer. Our guest on today's webcast, insert name here, Dr. James Beverly, has no connection whatsoever to any of the satirical content of the Unknown Webcast, hereafter known as the webcast, although we probably will not mention it again. This satirical content includes any and all commercials, end credits, puns, smart remarks, or anything else that might fall under the definition of satire. In the meantime, Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. bears no responsibility for or liability for anyone's opinions regarding this satirical content. This is straight from our lawyers at the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Now, if you really enjoy this webcast, or if it annoys you and you'd like to inflict it on somebody else, to ensure your continued access, please go to midwestoutreach.org, click the yellow donate button, and contribute as you feel led. And guess what? I forgot to change. You told me you wanted this changed, right? It says Don't
Yes.
forget to what did you want it to say now?
Just don't forget to subscribe. Leave it at that.
Just don't forget to subscribe. Okay, so well, YouTube and any place else that you happen
Any
to get,
place else that you happen to run across us.
anywhere you consume social media, that you can subscribe to us. And those are our announcements. Greetings, Dr. Beverly.
Greetings, James A. Beverly.
Felicitations.
Call me Jim.
Hi, Jim. Okay.
All right.
Great to be with you.
Okay, and he told me yesterday, by the way, Ron, just that he's infallible. And I started to point out some issues in his book. He said, well, that's all the editors because he's infallible.
That way, yeah. I think that works for me. Well, Dr. Mario, no, not, what's his name? Andrew Cuomo, he's infallible too. I just saw that on television. Nothing that happened in New York was his fault. So, so how did you get your infallibility, Dr. Beverly?
Well, I only talk about infallibility when my wife's not in the room. So.
Okay.
That's wise.
Years of practice.
Okay.
I can say one thing to the audience that is a good tip. It's this: if you're going to be in public and write, never write anything without getting other people to write it. So I've, in 42 years of writing stuff, I've never had to write a major correction just because I've been so careful. When I write a magazine article, it's just one page. We sometimes go through 10 to 15 edits just to make sure everything's correct.
Right.
Wow.
That's really important. We do that with our books and our most of our journal articles as well. In fact, I tried on certain topics to have those who would disagree with us review it.
Right.
Because then that helps to make it sort of bulletproof. Now, we're talking about your book, and I want people to see the cover of this. We have, for those who are interested, it's down in the description area. But we have, it looks like this.
I'll even put it on the show. Here we go.
Hey, that's what we like. Can you move it over to your left a little bit? Yeah, like cover your face with it because your name is covering up. There you go. The QAnon deception, everything you need to know about the world's most dangerous conspiracy theory by James A. Beverly. So what makes this, I mean, is it dangerous because I don't know as much about it as I should, or is it dangerous because, why is it dangerous?
Well, notice that I said it's a dangerous conspiracy theory. There's other theories that aren't conspiracies that are far more damaging, like communism, for example, or fascism. But QAnon is a conspiracy theory, and I think it's the most dangerous for several reasons. One, because it includes a basic theory, but then it's like a cosmic suction pump or vacuum cleaner that gathers up dozens of other conspiracy theories. So you end up with a smorgasbord of wild and, in my opinion, largely untrue fallacies. It's also dangerous because it teaches people to get to something the wrong way. If you decide one day to drive with your eyes closed and it doesn't hurt or lead to accident, well, you could say that's the way you should drive, but you were just lucky and you're committing yourself to a dangerous path. So QAnon is dangerous because its core theory is a huge lie, and many of the sub-theories are lies and delusions, but also it's a lousy way to get to the truth because people depend, the QAnon followers often depend on the so-called Q figure, and I don't think he or she or they are a good place to go. By the way, I should say now, Ron and Don, I should say for the listeners, if you are pro-Trump or conservative. Don't be fooled by my book title, because you can be pro QAnon. I mean, you can be pro Trump and not pro QAnon, which is the way I believe conservatives and Trump followers should be. Following Trump or believing he's basically on the road, but QAnon is not the way to go. In fact, I argue in my book that QAnon has hurt the president dramatically because he gets linked with the crazy things that are part of QAnon. Okay, I'll take a break and see if you want to respond.
Well, I would start with two questions, I guess, or maybe a remark and then a question. In 1996, I believe, I took a trip to Dallas for my work, and I thought, as long as I'm here, why don't I go visit the Texas Bookstore Depository from which it is alleged that Lee Harvey Oswald shot John F. Kennedy, and why don't I take a stroll around Dealey Plaza? I did both of those things. I was amazed at how small Dealey Plaza is compared to my picture of it in my head, from the photographs. It's really a remarkably compact area. And in 1996, at that time, I had never fired any kind of, weapon, firing weapon like a gun or a rifle or anything. When I looked down from the floor where Oswald made the shot, down into the street where the president's motorcade went by, I thought, you know what? I've never fired a gun in my life, but I think I could make this shot.
Right.
It's like everybody's talking about how this was such a difficult shot to pull off. I don't really think it was. If you had fired a gun.
I've been there twice, and I agree with you. It's not that far. Tell me, you were there twice, right? Yeah. There's a display, the museum part, where they have these, if you remember, plexiglass type displays where they have newspaper clippings from the days leading up to the visit of Kennedy to Dallas. I distinctly remember. I wish we'd had cell phones with cameras back then, because I would have taken a picture of it. I wish I'd at least written down the bibliographical information of this newspaper clipping. I remember that a couple of days before the assassination, there was a newspaper story that printed the route, the motorcade route. And the original version, apparently, the president's motorcade was not supposed to turn left and head down that side of the building. It was supposed to keep going straight. That's what I remember. Now, the reason I bring this up is because if that's all the assassin, let's assume it was Oswald, knew, then he's probably going to be positioning himself at a different window, which would have been on the perpendicular side of the building. When he sees the president's motorcade make a sudden left and head in a different direction, he's going to have to reposition himself at a different window quickly, which would explain why he shot from behind. That, to me, this all made perfect sense. I mean, he would have not been able to shoot. I mean, if I'm an assassin, my best shot is going to be from the front.
So anyway, does this bear on conspiracy in some way? Or
it's that there's so much evidence out there that's out there already. It's in the public domain that people are not using. Now, the definition of a conspiracy theory was what I was getting at, is a conspiracy that, if you explain it, it sounds like that could plausibly have happened. But where's the evidence? Where's even one shred of evidence?
So let's go back to the beginning, because we have several questions coming in that we would like to get to that kind of bear on this.
Okay.
And as you set this up, I was intrigued by your quoting an exchange between Donald Trump and Savannah Guthrie in the presidential debates.
Right.
And you had three takeaways from there, which I think sets up pretty well the rest of the book. And we start talking about why this is important. And then you also point out that because something is a conspiracy theory doesn't make it all or all untrue. Parts of it may be true, or it may all be true, but you need to look at the evidence for that. Now, on your takeaways, you do this. One, the first one is QAnon is a topic that is enormously divisive. Why is it enormously divisive?
Oh, because families, churches, political parties split over it. Um, there's a website that tracks people who are really upset called QAnon Casualties. There's 97,000 members of that website.
Wow.
So people are upset. It's actually QAnon in a way is like the Republican Democrat divide. Only it's a further divide because there's pro QAnon Republicans and Republicans who think QAnon is crazy. I should say, by the way, that in my book I say that when I refer to a conspiracy, it doesn't automatically mean it's untrue.
Right.
Scholars are divided about whether we should say that a conspiracy means something that's untrue. But I think technically we all know there's some conspiracy theories that turn out to be true.
Right.
And then others that are false and others we don't know about. Now, in my view, I think QAnon is clearly false. Now, it's not totally false. It's all, the three of us have studied more religions than most people and most philosophies. I can't think of any religion that's totally wrong. Now, there's some that are very, very, very deadly. I don't know if you guys have heard about the woman in Australia who teaches that you don't have to eat food. You can just breathe the air.
Right. Breatharians. Yeah, they're breatharians. Yeah. QAnon
is not dangerous like that, although it has more negative impact because thankfully not many people are breatharians.
So how many people? I mean, how do breatharians survive? Breatharians.
Actually, most people who admire it, they keep eating because they know they need it, and they just say they would say they're still working on growing spiritually. They haven't yet arrived at the I don't eat food elite status.
I believe in you can just live off of getting suntan. So I'm a suntanian.
It might get you cancer. We know that.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway,
the second point you raise is their encounter shows. This is talking about Susanna Guthrie and Trump. Their encounter shows how readily people question the other person's honesty when it comes to controversy. I think that's really important to talk about.
Oh yeah, I was on a radio show with Michael Brown in December, just after my book came out, and it was just amazing how much I got attacked without people. It was obvious people hadn't read the book, and then they just say things that are, personal attacks. So these are QAnon's one of those controversies that is just huge, and it creates bitterness and division. I wrote my book because I recognized last May or June that it was a theory that deserves some study. But if you look at all the articles about it, the vast majority of them don't give a lot of evidence. They just say it's a baseless theory.
Right.
And now, since Trump said something positive about it last August, there's been an explosion of news columns, and what's being done is you say QAnon is crazy, Trump likes QAnon, therefore Trump must be crazy. Now I think the president made a mistake. I think both in August and October when he was interviewed on NBC, I think he should have distanced himself from it. He should have said, look, I'm glad for QAnon people who support me, but there's a lot of craziness in the theories. And so I wish he had spoken against it. I wrote a document for him, which I'm trying to get to him, and I hope he comes out and tells the American public, well, look, I don't like Hillary Clinton, but I don't think that she and Bill kidnap, torture, rape, kill, and eat the blood of children.
So now we're getting into the substance of QAnon theory, because I didn't know about. I knew that it had something to do with child trafficking, and how Trump was supposed to be secretly combating it. This is what I heard. So correct me in incorrect details. I didn't hear the part about Bill and Hillary having babies for breakfast. So what else does this QAnon theory entail?
Here's the core of it. October 28th, 2017, just over 3 years ago, a military figure who goes by the letter Q, because it's a letter high up that gives you security clearance. If you have the letter Q in the Department of Energy, you have high security clearance. So Q started working with Trump. This is what the theory goes like. And he started to give details of his work with Trump, and he put in information about what's really going on in the deep state. So that's one of the big ideas. Okay. Trump works with Q.
This came up with in Trump administration. It didn't exist because one of the questions is, was it around during the Bush administration? And the answer to that would be no, right?
Right.
Okay.
So it starts in 2017. Q releases information on the dark web, or the sleaziest parts of the web, 4chan and 8chan, and now 8Q. And he released almost 5,000 posts over the last 3 years, but it stopped. It stopped just, if my memory's right, just before the election. Now, personally, I don't think Q is a military figure high up working with Trump. I think the whole thing was created by people who lived on in the basement of the internet and just put out wild theories. So when Q first posted, he said that Hillary Clinton's going to be arrested.
Right.
He posted that some of Clinton's associates, Podesta and others, were going to be arrested.
Right.
And the U.S. Military were going to be on guard because there was going to be such unrest. Well, that never happened. Q regularly said things that were absolutely false. For example, Q said early on that Robert Mueller was actually working with Trump. The whole Mueller investigation was a false flag to get Hillary Clinton arrested. Well, that didn't look to be true, did it?
No, it didn't really pan out.
No, Mueller wasn't cooperating with Trump. Then Q talked about the midterm elections in 2018 going to Republicans. That didn't happen. And all through the last 3 years, he kept saying the big thing's about to happen. Sit back and watch.
But,
and then even before November 3rd, Q posted that it was going to be a victory for Donald Trump.
But, in fairness to the QAnon people, how do we really know that Hillary Clinton wasn't arrested and then replaced with an exact duplicate android that looks just like her, talks like her? How do we know?
Well, okay, that's true. How do we know if you believe that that's the way the world operates? I just don't think.
Do you have evidence? Can you prove that that's not what happened?
No, but one thing I say in my book, it's up to the QAnon people to prove their theory. What they do, in chapter 7 of my book, I give about 15 reasons why I think QAnon is immoral, dangerous, false. One of them is they say things without proof, and they don't worry about it.
See, back in the 1980s, I met my first Holocaust denier.
Oh yeah,
And
actually, I got involved in conspiracy theories because I got involved in a fight in Canada over in my home city on the east coast of Canada. One of the teachers, public school teachers, was a Holocaust denier. So I didn't know much about the Holocaust, so I got involved in it.
yeah. So one thing that I have learned invariably, now I have never, now, I'm not saying there aren't exceptions to this. I'm just saying I've never seen one. That whenever I meet a person who is engaged in one type of conspiracy theory, they end up having a whole bunch of others that they subscribe to as well. It's as though they can't resist conspiracy theories. It gives them a feeling like they have in fact, the first guy I met, he basically admitted that he took pride in the fact that he allegedly had information that nobody else had. He had information that I didn't have. He said, I read books you don't read. You see, I have information you don't have. And this seemed to be, it wasn't seeming or anything. It was definitely a point of pride for him. He took great pride in having these sources, which he eventually shared with me. One of the conspiracies he believed was that there was a conspiracy to cover up the fact that the white European peoples were actually descendants of the 12 tribes of Israel. And that there was a 29th chapter of the book of Acts. It wasn't just an organization somebody founded. There was an actual 29th chapter, and he showed me a copy of it in English. And I said, where is your proof that this was ever part of the New Testament? And where's your proof that it isn't?
Right.
So, in other words, they continually commit burden of proof fallacies.
Yeah, that's right. Well, in the case of QAnon, one of the other things I say about it is they have no control mechanism in the QAnon world to decide what theory goes too far, because Q, in a way, is like a pope figure, but there's and I suppose the popular teachers are cardinals, but theories
College of Cardinals
come along and get thrown out into the QAnon world, and then some of them become incredibly popular. Like JFK Jr. is still alive. There's a woman named Kellyanne Boatwright, and she has 50 or 60 videos arguing that JFK Jr.
When I was a kid, that was on the National Enquirer cover that JFK Sr. was still alive. They had a picture allegedly of him in a wheelchair.
Right.
On Desert Island.
My first name's Vincent, and he's supposed to be JFK Jr. in disguise.
Well,
it'd be nice if he would submit to a DNA test.
Yeah, that would be interesting. We do it. So, is there an actual Q, and he's, or is there potentially many Qs? We just don't know.
Well, there have been some scientists, no kidding, people who are geniuses in computer analysis, etc. They think that there's been more than one Q, and most scholars who study QAnon say that Q is probably either a guy in the Philippines named Jim Watkins, or Q is really tied to Watkins. Here's why. Jim Watkins and his son Ron, they're both quite well known now because of QAnon. They run the website called 8kun or 8kun. It's the number 8 and then KUN. That website is where Q puts his material. Now, it is one of the most disgusting places to go on the web. Why would Q keep posting on this dark web? I think it's because he's trapped there, he, she, or they, because Jim and Ron Watkins want to control the money that comes in, because that's where Q posts.
What if it turns out that when we find Q, he looks just like John Delancey, who was to play Q on Star Trek: The Next Generation? Okay, forget that. You don't
Okay.
Q.
I'm science fiction. I don't like science fiction.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay. So, Audrey says she came in late, but what about the theory that Q is a computer algorithm program named Tyler? Now, I want to hold that thought for a moment, because one of the things that comes up, which you do raise in your book and which we have seen, is it has impacted a fairly good percentage of Christians and those who claim to be prophets within the Christian church. And one of the things that Ron and I have noticed and have helped to support is that there's a certain amount of heresy that just seems to go through culture, but you're limited on the kind of heresies that are really available.
Well, it's running out, and the QAnon theory has kind of come along just to the nick of time, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
Here's a combination that's kind of strange. The people who push QAnon are very dogmatic about how true it all is. Like one of their main teachers, Joe M., he says that it was a mathematical impossibility that Trump could that Joe Biden could win the election. So the QAnon people are very dogmatic, like the charismatic prophets who said Trump was going to win and that God had said it.
Right.
One thing sad is how dogmatic people are about claiming to know the future.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, what we have now is a sponsor who is trying to alert us to the fact that the situation is dire. According to the latest research, at the present rate of consumption, our supply of heresies will be completely depleted by 2050. The consequences of this will be disastrous. If this happens, most cults will close their doors by the end of the century, and most heretical websites will completely disappear from the internet, not to mention the fact that 75% of what passes as Christian programming, think TBN, will disappear from airwaves and cable TV. The solution, however, is simple. Heresy recycling. Whether you're online, visiting a church, or out at the mall, you can do your part. Always look for the label, the HCB label, the Heresy Conservation Board, ensuring sustainable errors for the 21st century and beyond. I mean, think about, Don, what would happen if we ran out of heresy, ran out of errors. What would you and I do? We'd have to get real jobs, okay?
Yeah,
that would be really hard. So QAnon is coming along just in time. It gives us another thing to talk about.
Well, you know what? One of the things that just came out in a recent survey is how popular QAnon is in evangelical circles.
Right.
Now, I think and hope that most evangelicals who are into QAnon are into it because they basically value Trump and value conservative ideas. I doubt, and I hope that most people who identify with QAnon wouldn't go for the wilder conspiracy theories.
But, isn't a conservative ideal
dangerous?
Isn't due process and critical thinking, aren't those conservative ideals?
Oh yeah, but it's easy to get fooled. I mean, right. Long after I knew that QAnon wasn't a great place to go for truth, it was still appealing to hear that there were new Q posts. That way I got to go and see what the latest teaching was. One of the Q teachers says, getting teaching from Q is like being a Jew getting manna from heaven in the wilderness. By the way, Q is not always wrong, especially in the last year. he or she or they got better at posting more reliable material. I wish the QAnon people, whoever leads them, and the main teachers, I wish they'd get together and say, let's rebrand. Let's just go for conservative values. Let's also, if they want to push Trump, fine. But now here's an interesting thing about QAnon. I've only ever met one person who has said that Trump has no faults.
Really?
Really?
Yeah, I was on a radio show, I think out of Florida, and the host said that Trump. She didn't mean by that Trump has he's sinless. She meant just no big faults. Well, everybody else I've ever met, including people who know the president, they said he has big faults. Well, see, QAnon hurts Trump by being over positive about him, the same way that some Christians are. And what that does, if somebody's telling you all the time, you're just unbelievable, you're the greatest, you're God's man, you're the chosen one.
You start believing the press.
Yep. And that feeds into his narcissism, sadly.
Yeah.
Which right away, when you say the word narcissism, we're assuming he's got some big faults, right?
Oh, yeah, that's
and just my personal opinion, anyone who runs for president has to have some degree of narcissism.
Well, okay. If narcissism means self-confident or pretty egocentric, I think that would be true.
Yeah, but narcissism generally means you think the world revolves around you. You're so fixated, like the narcissist legend or myth of the boy who stared at his reflection in the pond because he couldn't believe how beautiful he was, and they turned him into a flower. The gods allegedly did this. I can think of several. I mean, the man apparently has no filter. He has
no social filters.
His first instinct seems to be to lash out personally at anybody.
Yeah. Do you ever think maybe that he does have a filter, which means his Twitter feed could have been more wild? But no,
I guess so.
I think he does listen to people, though. For example, after the first debate, people must have got to him to tell him to tone it down for the next debate with Joe Biden, because there was a dramatic difference.
Oh yeah, there was. Yeah, I agree.
I want to be careful because I don't want to get into Trump good, bad, or indifferent. My explanation on a personal level is this, because I've been in construction for 40 years, been driving a semi truck, either full or part-time for 11 years now. And what I can tell you about Trump is this. He talks like a construction worker, a blue-collar guy. Whatever's on his tongue when he opens his mouth just rolls out for everyone to see. He's not polished. He's not overly concerned about hurting somebody's feelings with something he's going to say. He's not intentionally mean. It just sort of rolls out there.
Well, the other thing, Don, is he doesn't lash out at just anybody. He goes on the attack against people who've attacked him.
Correct. He's a fighter. He fights back.
The people I know who've been with him, they say that in private, in ordinary conversation, he's gentle, polite, civil. Patrick Byrne, who just got involved in studying election issues, he just wrote that Trump in private is a very...
Well, this is interesting because it's kind of like that's everybody's fault. Since social media has come about, it's like Trump is in a way, he's like all of us. It's like when we have the anonymity of the web, we say and do things that we wouldn't do if we were in somebody's presence. We're going to be a lot more polite and courteous, and
He might, and we might if we felt attacked. Now, for you and I, and Jim raised this, we're kind of used to being attacked, and I have a stock line, Ron. You know this. Others who've heard us often know this. I have this memorized. When someone contacts me to tell me I'm mean or I'm vicious or something, my response is always the same. You could be right, and I might be short and fat. And I have a lot of other characteristics that could be detrimental. And I could give you my kids' phone numbers. They could tell you a lot of really bad things. But the question is, am I wrong? That's the question we got to deal with. And I don't know that Trump has done that. So
I like to look at this comment by Audrey RV. Q played on the Trump being like Cyrus. Now, I didn't know Q did that, but Cyrus was the king who allowed the Jews to return from Babylon to the Holy Land to rebuild the temple and to rebuild the walls of the city. Of course, there's a lot more to the story than that, but he's considered the paragon or the prototype, you might say, of all righteous Gentiles by the Jews because he did this amazing thing. And Trump did things for Israel, important things, but to elevate him to the level of Cyrus seems a little bit maybe over the top, to me at least.
You know that the Israeli government, they created a coin with Cyrus on one side and Trump on the other.
I did not know that, so maybe they're part of QAnon. I'm just kidding.
QAnon picked it up.
Okay.
Cyrus.
Okay.
A guy named Lance Wall now, who believes that God told him that Trump would be a Cyrus figure.
Really?
Trump has done more to help the Middle East than anyone in history.
I can't deny that.
Friedman of the New York Times last summer, and Friedman despises Trump, but he wrote in one of his columns that Trump is to be credited with doing things in the Middle East that no one has done.
Right.
And in Korea and in Iran and in other places.
One thing that Democrats don't realize is they don't realize that the admiration for Trump is mainly about real accomplishments and real issues.
Right.
Right.
I don't live in America, but I get out enough to know there's immigration problems. America gets into wars too easily. Or Trump has turned, thankfully, and he's pro-life, not pro-abortion. And on it goes.
Well, another thing which Q does raise some concerns about, but something that we follow actually, and Audrey RV is one person who helps us with that, along with Carl Teichgrib, is monitor what's going on with globalists and the UN. And Audrey raises an interesting sort of a question here on relative to Q, is that Q brought about America worship. In other words, America became something to be worshipped, almost more than God. If Q and Trump save America, the world would be better, is their argument. While people were trusting a plan, whatever the plan was that we never really saw happen, just trust the plan, the UN and globalists moved forward, implemented their plans. How did Q save other countries?
Oh, well, QAnon is actually a passive movement. We're told all the time in the Q posts, sit back and watch. And one of the things I say in my book is they shouldn't have spent so much time studying the posts from Q. They should have got out. If they want Trump to win, they should have mobilized more votes for Trump on November 3rd.
Right.
Or they should have helped Trump be a better leader. But it was all adulation of Trump. Now, thankfully, Trump resisted some of the bad plans or ideas in the globalist world.
Right.
I mean, I know just from my minimal knowledge of economics, he brought the economy to a much better platform in America because he realized it might be a good idea to encourage American jobs.
It might be. You never know,
I don't give QAnon much credit because any good ideas in QAnon were already there, and they're spread much better by regular Republican leaders or conservative Christians. I think QAnon divided people unnecessarily because of all the crazy things.
So
And here's the amazing thing. What QAnon said is we're mainly about helping Trump fight the satanic cabal led by Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Michelle, Bill Clinton, George Soros. Well, actually, 100 different agencies that help save and rescue children went public, I think last October or November, and said, QAnon is hurting the real rescue of children.
Yeah.
how are they doing that?
It's putting the focus in the wrong places. Now, everybody knows that pedophilia is real, et cetera, but that topic has to be handled by experts and by child rescue professionals or agencies that really know what they're doing. So it's pretty amazing that the agencies in America and around the world that try to rescue children or recover kids from homeless situations, they think QAnon's been not a great reality.
Well, now, one of the things that you're pointing out is a question I wanted to raise, and that is the bad fallout, not just from conspiracies, because some of them at least deny that we landed on the moon. Some of them are flat earthers. So, as Ron pointed out, if you buy one big conspiracy, perhaps you have bought into others. I think some have done that. But there's a downfall. One, as you point out, is it's really hurting the prevention or addressing actual pedophilia rings and that kind of stuff, because there are some. Kim raises the question of QAnon became an extremely good opportunity to introduce control of speech by tech companies. So if it wasn't for Q, would we have the cancel culture happening in social media? That's a great question.
Yeah, I think the main reason cancel culture is complicated because
Sure.
some about academics who get canceled. The big thing that's gone on with cancel culture, though, is it's all about how much they hate Donald Trump. So I used to have a Parler account, but the whole Parler thing got shut down until it got revived in the last week or so. What explains the Facebook banning, the control of the media empire? It's all about they want to shut down Donald Trump, and by extension, they want to go against anybody who's pro-Trump, pro-Republican. It's actually astonishing to me that media participate in censorship. You know, a while ago, I was in a call with a major news reporter, producer actually, in Canadian television. And she did not know that there was a controversy about Hunter Biden's laptop.
Oh.
And you know, if you went in October or early November to the New York Times, Washington Post, you didn't see much about Hunter's laptop. And what you did see is a massive campaign to say it was Russian disinformation.
Right.
And polls have shown that the vote on November 3rd might have been different. Would have been different to some degree if those details about Hunter's laptop were not.
We had Tom Gilson on a couple of weeks ago talking about because so many have said evangelicals are too involved in politics, and did a really good article demonstrating that it has always been part of the ethos of the Christian church to be engaged politically because we are a citizen government. Every citizen is the government, and so we should be engaged in the elections and so forth. But he said we have had the first time in history ever that the House, Senate, Office of the President, and media all hold one ideology.
Oh, absolutely. It's so frightening. I was watching a guy named Mark Levin last night. He's got a Sunday night TV show, and I watch him regularly. He's really good at understanding the Constitution. But last night he had Dave Rubin on talking about the monopoly. You have big government, big tech, and big media, all with one view, and it is scary.
Yeah. So, is that also then, because of that, is that fanning the flames of QAnon, or is QAnon help to create that scenario where the four have aligned so closely?
Well, QAnon was used as a bludgeon to attack Trump and Republicans. But the fact that Trump lost really hurt QAnon because it's been built up for a year or more that Q is talking about a massive victory on November 3rd. And then when he lost, they started predicting, well, things will change by this date in December. And then when that didn't work out, they shifted to things will change on January 6th. And then when that changed, January 20th became the big date on Trump's going to call in the military.
Is there any information on how many QAnon members, so to speak, were involved in the January 6th storming of the Capitol?
The New York Times, Washington Post, and other places have analyzed everybody who gets arrested, and then they give their identification.
Yeah.
Most of the people that are charged so far are members of the white nationalist groups. QAnon has some membership, but I think there's more of the Proud Boys and the other white nationalist groups.
Okay.
Now, one of the things that I don't know how you feel about this, and maybe you don't need to speak to it necessarily, but some who are pointed out as being have teachings that should be very concerned and get angry about that, and sometimes look for weapons that they can use to kind of shut down opposition. I know Benny Hinn, for example, did that some years ago.
Yeah. And, I think if we were to call him or talk to him, he probably is still doing it. You see, our friends at World's End Theology Outlet, your one-stop resource for half-baked heresies, dubious doctrines, and other ideas whose time is gone, have a special announcement for you. Your spiritual rights are under attack. People who oppose your teaching are criticizing you by name in public. Are you looking for that one verse in Scripture that says, if you don't like them, kill them? Well, we have something even better. The Benny Hinn Holy Ghost machine gun, because you just don't have to take it anymore. The Benny Hinn Holy Ghost machine gun is fully automatic, so there's no waiting for results. Its high-capacity magazines wipe out every detractor. Its high-caliber rounds blow their heads off. Well, in the spirit, of course. The Benny Hinn Holy Ghost machine gun, available only at World's End Theology Outlet. And of course, that's the ultimate canceling, isn't it? I
don't think that's going to help Benny Hinn send money to your show.
Why didn't we think
I don't think Benny Hinn would ever send money to our show.
By the way, that clip reminded me of, I tracked Benny for a while, and I was at one of his crusades here in Canada. People like Benny, who have his power, popularity, and wealth, they should hire people that get to radically impact what he says and writes.
Right.
I once told one of my best friends who knows Benny, I said to him, if I said some of the things that Benny says, my wife and friends would be all over me. And this friend of mine said, well, Benny has people that try to get him to moderate, but he doesn't sometimes listen.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, we have two questions from those who are watching there in the chat area. One is from Switzerland, and their question is, they're wondering if it could be Democratic group behind QAnon that makes fun of the Republicans. So if you can mock the QAnon supporters, and then he has to understand the ticket. So could it be a Democrat group
Like a false flag?
Trying to make Democrats look, the Republicans look bad?
Okay, that is a popular theory. The Democrats were sitting around in October 2017. Let's do a what's called a live action role play and a LARP, and we'll pretend to be pro-Trumps. I don't think that works as a theory. Here's why. The early people who made QAnon very popular went public with their names and identities, and they are the ones, plus others who tagged along later, they're the ones who pushed QAnon and made it famous. And they are very, very clearly pro-Trump and pro-Republican.
Okay.
So, no, it's fun to think about it being a Democratic con game, but no, this was done mainly by Trump people, Republican people who love him. I think they just got off on a... Well, actually, here's what I think happened. I think it started by pro-Trump people, and they didn't expect it to catch on.
Right.
But 3 or 4 people took over the publicity about it, and they made it incredibly popular within a month. It didn't hurt that Roseanne Barr was an early promoter.
Right.
Jerome Corsi was an early promoter.
So she was a promoter of Trump or QAnon?
QAnon.
Roseanne Barr.
Both.
Really? No.
You can't be if you're pro QAnon, you got to be pro Trump.
Well, that's true. I just didn't know. I wasn't aware she was connected with QAnon.
No, she was one of the early figures. She tweeted about it.
Wow.
I haven't checked her lately, but I think she's still involved.
Okay. Now, we have another question from Channel News, is their name. I am new to the faith, so please forgive me if I'm wrong, but isn't God the one in control of who our leaders are, etc.?
Yep.
Could Trump have lost because so many people were focusing on him rather than on God?
Well, God does at one level, since he's omnipotent, everything that happens means that he allows it. But I think there's some things that God allows that he wishes were different. But he gives human beings freedom. He lets people make mistakes. So maybe let's just play a little game here in our heads. Maybe God wanted Trump to win, but if Trump continues on a certain path, maybe God is no longer going to bless him like he hoped to. Or here's another wild theory. What if the election was a fraud? Well, that means Trump won and lost at the same time. By the way, I wish that I had a degree in mathematics and new statistics and new computer programming, because I would love to figure out. Most people think that. Half of America thinks that Trump won.
Right.
Here's an idea for America. I don't want to be too pushy as a Canadian, but wouldn't it be incredible if there was a way for Republicans and Democrats to get together and say, let's settle this election once and for all. We'll figure out a way where the best people who think there was a fraud in the election debate the best people who think it was honest. And let's make that a public forum where the truth can be known.
I think the only part of your premise is the only problem is, when you get to the point where you say, if Republicans and Democrats could get together, right there, you should stop. I don't think that's going to happen in the current environment.
Oh, right. I absolutely agree. My book ends with a hope that I hope that QAnon will go away, and I hope that Democrats and Republicans will get together and treat one another better. But sadly, it was clear as soon as.
But it's like at the political level, there was, when it came out last year during the impeachment of all time, that, what was it, Chuck Grassley, there was a Republican and a Democrat who were actually friends. I forget which two they were. I think it was Dianne Feinstein and Chuck Grassley or somebody. And when it came out that they were actually buddies, and also on the Supreme Court, when it came out that Ruth Bader Ginsburg
and Antonin Scalia
were actually liked each other. Yeah. Well, they liked each other, and people were outraged. They were outraged by this.
Yeah, I actually mentioned the Supreme Court justices at the end of my book and say it would help if current Democrat and Republicans would get along like that. But the Democrats just announced a $500,000 campaign to use the Capitol attack as proof that Republican Congress members have sold out to QAnon.
Where we are today is the left. The left. This is only true of the left. They have so poisoned the water that you cannot be friends anymore with the right. The conservatives are open to becoming friends. The Democrats are.
Okay, well, that's it for our political discussions.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been reversed. It could have been flipped. I'm not saying Republicans are better people.
We're going to do this just quickly because Ron is going to have to head out. I'm not sure if you have 2 more minutes or not. But Rachel Manley poses an important question, and hopefully you can address it, James. I know we have to deal with this from a cult standpoint very often, but the question is this. What do you do about family and friends that subscribe to QAnon, no matter how many false predictions they just hold on to their goalposts? Their goalposts are moved. So they are so committed, and Ron and I talk about this as, what are you invested in? If you're invested in QAnon, is there any evidence that will dissuade you from belief in them?
Okay, there are people who leave QAnon. There was just a major report out yesterday. So there is hope. What I urge people to do is ask the person who's into QAnon or whatever false ideology you're worried about, ask them if they want to keep talking about it. If it took me too long to realize there's no sense talking to people who don't want to talk about it.
Right.
And then if they're interested, keep talking. Remember that just telling somebody they're wrong won't work.
Right.
Okay, that's just saying what's obvious. You think they're wrong. If the person is open to talk, softly try to point things out, give things time, and then I'd say keep the relationship alive and keep hoping. I've been friends with some atheists for 60 out of my 67 years. I've been friends with atheists that taught me in university for 40 years. I've just become friends with some major leaders in some pretty false theories, but I want to stay calm and keep the relationship going and pray for people. Maybe with the QAnon thing, you could tell people this. In my book, I give my email address and I ask people to write me if they disagree. So maybe giving somebody a copy of my book could lead to an open door of that person learning from my book.
And in the description below, there are two things that those who are watching need to see. One is a link to a copy of your book. Two is your email address, so they can take you up on that offer. Now, we're going to have to go because Ron does have a little bit of a time constraint.
Yeah, so let's give credit to whom credit is due. Our resident cult leader profiler is Neil before me. Our wardrobe manager is See How It Fits You. Our culinary services are provided by Chef Ham and Cheese. Our tinfoil hat provisioner is Just In Case. Jehovah's Witnesses coverage comes from Armageddon and D Opposer. Our Mormon archives manager is Polly Gummis. Our liberal denominations bureau chief is Lucy Goosey. Transgender issues coverage comes from Ben Hur. Our special correspondent for cults based on the Hindenburg disaster and flying turkeys, dehumanity. Our fact-checking supervisor is Yoleg Pulling. Technical assistance comes through Murky Research. Our legal advisors are at the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham & Howe. Our grievance resolution director is Giovanna Pisani. Our director of privacy assurance is Wiretapping. And original idea sourcing comes from Drew A. Blank. The Unknown Webcast is a production of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in cooperation with Emergency Manicure Productions, both of whom are solely responsible for this content, although you will never be able to prove that in a court of law.
Never. All right, Jim, I would like to ask you to maybe come back and pick up some more on this as I go through the book, maybe in a month or so, and we'll have a better idea on where QAnon is going maybe by that time. Is it going to morph and change? Is it going to die? Is it going to still be a force to be reckoned with? I don't know. So
the next date is March 4th.
March 4th?
Trump is supposed to have a big move to
Okay.
Now that's announced by QAnon or by Trump?
QAnon.
Okay. well, we will see.
I need to sign off.
Everyone else, if you can hold on a second, everyone else, adios.
Adios.
See you guys.